There we go. All right.
Hold on.
Yeah. So we've got the announcement out. And you two up here. So I will. Yep. I will.
Yeah,
I will,
lovely.
I will leave it. I will leave it. Leave it in your capable hands, Nick.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, so it's Sarah, correct?
Yes, that's right. Hi.
Well, hi, I'm Nick. I'm helping out the Space Poggers team. They're just organizing this AMA. So they've just let me know sort of yesterday. So we'll just sort of get straight into it. And so I just sort of recently, like I'll talk about a bit about myself, and then we'll get into the charity in a moment. So I've sort of come into Space Poggers, and it's kind of my first community, and I kind of just like the vibe of it, and eventually I like all the stuff that's happened with the charity initiative. So the Penguin Tribe, which I'm sort of co-leading at the moment, has picked you guys, WaterAid, and we'll just sort of get into just think of it as just telling people about WaterAid and give because bringing up to speed about what the crisis is, how you guys are handling it, and how people can help and volunteer, etc. And
Sure.
just before that, and just how you got involved in it as well. And
in WaterAid?
yeah, in WaterAid and just charities.
Sure. Sorry, hearty laughter coming from the background of my house. Yeah, sure. So I'm, you can probably tell, British, and WaterAid has quite a big presence in the UK. But I now live in New York, and literally a job offer came up, and I knew WaterAid, so I was like, this is amazing. And to be honest, this is going to sound really silly, but I was surprised that the water crisis was still a thing. Like, I remember learning about it at school, and I was like, oh God, that's still going on? We didn't figure that out. Okay. So I started doing my research and then was horrified. Yeah, so I've been at WaterAid now coming up for 6 years. Sorry, I don't know if my husband finds me really funny in the background or not, but someone's laughing a lot. And so WaterAid, what WaterAid does, like very simply, is build water systems in the developing world. That's probably fairly obvious from the name, right? But that's just like the bit that you see is obviously the end result and the tap. But it's everything that goes before that that leads to that tap being possible. And not just the kind of the hardware and the infrastructure, but actually just everything before it in terms of water engineers coming in to assess like the topography of the area and what kind of water is around, the groundwater, is a nearby lake, doing an assessment on whether or not there is reliable water nearby that can be used in the community. But even that is kind of somewhat tangible, but it's all about the relationships you have with people on the ground and the trust with the community, because you can't just walk in somewhere like with a shovel and be like, hey guys, we're going to build you something. Like, that's not really appropriate. So it's that whole part of it, and working with communities to kind of appropriately explain why hand washing actually is incredibly helpful and prevents the spread of disease and can save lives and reduce sickness, and sort of doing that in a way that makes sense in that cultural context. So, and it varies massively. WaterAid works in Latin America, parts of it across Africa and Asia, and that's a huge raft of sort of different sort of communities and cultural norms. So kind of sort of weaving our way through that sort of complexity, and still being able to kind of get something done. That is a long answer. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, it is, and it really enlightens on what I suppose. I'll use me as an example. Like, from growing up in a first world country, you don't think about this stuff, so it's important to send that message of, oh, this crisis is actually happening in the third world countries, and what to lead into that is what areas, what type, which countries, and what are the different types of water aid necessarily, because on the website you've got how you got people carrying, they have to travel so far to get water for their community, but then there's also you have like little hand sanitizing stations in like a not a more developed country, but like a more city area that people might not think of, like how important that is.
Yeah, no, it's a really like vast and complex sort of issue, and it sounds so like simple. Like no one disputes the idea that people need water. Like luckily, regardless of anyone's differences, like no, we all agree on that, so that's cool. So we work in very remote areas, but also in sort of urban areas, and it's kind of balancing those balancing those extremes. So one thing that might work in very remote Cambodian villages in the mountains probably won't work in sort of urban India. Like that's just the two are so different. And so it's kind of we have program officers in the country programs where we work, and then they have their own sort of engineering sort of expertise. There's like water testing, and just sort of understanding, obviously now climate comes into it a lot. We have to make sure that things are built to be climate resilient. There's an array of rich options. One helpful way that we found to talk about it is to kind of like take sort of one example. So for example, imagine like a 7-year-old girl in one small village in the developing world, possibly Africa, really anywhere. If she does not have access to water, girls are often tasked with going to get the water, and it's just cultural norms. I'm not trying to make a big comment on feminism or anything. It's just that's what ends up happening 8 out of 10 times. And so the girls go to collect the water. The water's often not actually really fit for drinking, and it just takes hours. The water table's highest in the morning, so if they're collecting from sort of groundwater sources, they miss school, and then if they keep missing school, they don't do well in school, and it kind of just holds them back. But like it keeps them trapped, and that's just one example of how lack of clean water is just a very tangible kind of impediment to getting an education, and so it just keeps communities sort of stuck. And I don't want to be like a Debbie Downer. Like no one wants that. The good news is like 9 out of 10 people around the world now do have clean water. Like there's huge progress. It's great. People are really lots of people are working on this issue. There's a kind of momentum towards it. There's a lot of interest in it, which is great. India right now is very into toilets for their communities. Great. So we're helping there. Obviously the pandemic, that's not the elephant in the room.
Yeah, we'll get into that a bit later just to see how that changed things and but so use the example of India. So the program to help them out was it's what was the building stage? What sort of why did it what led to that development, and how is it sustainable, and
right.
do you just build the pump on build all the stations but then just leave, or is it do you follow up kind of thing?
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's kind of the invisible work of it. So we when we do any water project or any project generally, it's never just water. We talk about the water because people like talking about water more than they like talking about toilets and hand washing education. But we would we sort of come in and then work with the community to sort of try and identify community leaders or elders, whether elected or just socially. You can always find who's got influence in the community. And then so we sort of start this program of sort of WASH, as they call it in the industry, which is water and sanitation and hygiene sort of training. And the goal is to get people locally enthusiastic about the changes this can do, because getting people to change their behaviors is really hard, especially when it's not obvious that it's actually going to do anything for you. It's just a preventative measure, like hand washing, it's a negative sell, right? So we work with the community members. Often they're women, just by virtue of women often looking after the kids and being involved in the school, and then sort of being more domestically focused, but not always by any stretch. And then they in turn impart that knowledge to the school, to their children, to their to the people in their community, just to kind of keep it going. The idea that and so there's some communities offer incentives, offer prizes to the people that can prove they've been doing the hand washing or whatever. And it sounds sort of quite simplistic, but it's basically trying to in a culturally appropriate way, encourage people to then start, washing their hands and using the services that they've got, because just so then they can actually benefit from them, and they can start to see the advantages, and their children don't get as sick, and they're not spending as much money on medicine, and they've got more time because the water is readily available. So pointing out all of that stuff, we train mechanics, and the whole point is that we train them so when we've left, when our engineers are not kind of in the immediate vicinity, if something breaks, there is a solution. There is something that can be found locally to repair the services. We're not going to, jet in some hideously expensive Wi-Fi super amazing thing. If it breaks, it then ruins the whole system for the whole community. It has to be something that can be used and found locally, to make it easier to maintain, and that in turn creates jobs for people. So it's quite nice.
Sustainable.
Yeah.
And so with that, are there volunteers that help you with that, or is that come out of costs that the donations help out?
It comes out of costs. At the community level, we do. I think there's sometimes some work with like the Peace Corps and some of the bigger organizations. But this is all kind of in-country efforts, because obviously for cultural and language barrier reasons, that tends to be the most effective way to kind of just get people on side and get everybody sort of united.
Interesting. So with this, I'm hosting the AMA, and we'll have questions in the flight deck chat, which I'll be looking at. So I'll just relay. And we have Necrotic asking, he's interested in where you feel the dollar goes the farthest, and as far as number of people helped per dollar.
Hang on, I just want to make, so in terms of like what can a dollar buy, or what's the most
from my understanding, the amount of money donated, like how much, just say $100 donated, like I'm going to assume there's many different ways to donate, and how they people can choose where they want to help out, what programs, or is it people donate?
Just actually, there's lots of different ways that we do it. So basically for every like say $1, whatever, about 85% is directly into programs, like just go straight to the field. And the rest is often to do with like program management stuff. A lot of the bigger grants, for example, require the non-profit, like the USAID or Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, people like that. They require you as a non-profit to kind of put your own money in. They like you to have some skin in the game, as it were. And so then that's also another sort of separate tier of money. So we sort of fundraise for that, often to supplement the larger grants that we've got.
And because he's asking about the overhead cost and advertising as a percentage overall with the whole budget.
So about 85% directly to the programs. 6%, I believe, globally, 6% maybe just Water in America is fundraising costs directly, and then the rest is the kind of program adjacent expenses, like paying staff to be in country programs and to that kind of stuff. The fax machine. Some countries still have fax machines, would you believe? But yes.
That's still a thing. And what examples of fundraising would be?
How do you mean? So what?
What
kind of appeals do we do?
Yes.
Oh yeah, sure. So the last one we've just finished was about actually girls' education. Probably why that came to mind. And it was fundraising to basically, broadly speaking, across all country programs, it's about $25 to equip someone with clean water. Very average. And so we were just basically fundraising to keep girls in school. We're like, we want them to carry backpacks to school and not buckets for water. That was like the tagline. And that money kind of, it gets dispersed to all the projects that we're doing, but to fund that portion of the work. So it's, equipping people with, it's equipping schools with taps and toilets and soap and, that kind of thing.
And to go a bit more, like what with WaterAid, so it started in 1989, and we're here now. So what are like the short-term goals, or it will be like all the different programs they have now, but then what are the long-term goals, and how would you measure that, and what like obstacles and hurdles are faced for your charity?
Sure. That's a really great question. Thank you. Yeah, so the long term, WaterAid has actually just launched a new strategy. So the long term goal is in the next 10 years, WaterAid wants to reach 400 million people with clean water. So far we've reached 28.8 million people, right? So that's a huge jump. And what we're doing is, I'm like, whoa, we're getting really ambitious. I like it. But what we're doing is, instead of just building the hardware and sort of working like at a district level, there's been a greater push towards actually like encouraging people in their own countries to start advocating and sort of demanding of their governments that they have these systems. And a lot of now it's a little, because of the technology that's available, it is a little easier for people to do that. So a lot of countries where we're working, didn't have landlines, but they now have pretty good mobile phone connections and internet access. So it's now much easier for those people to contact their local elected officials. And it's this emerging kind of opportunity. And so WaterAid's really trying to sort of leverage that because, people coming in from overseas to tell somebody or suggest to some elected official that, we really should get some water systems going. Like, they already know that, but when they hear it from their own constituents, it's like that much more powerful. And they're all elected, they're elected officials, right? So it's sort of in their interest to listen to their people and sort of fulfill their needs. So that's one of the ways they're trying to do it. And then kind of working, to influence people in the US government, for example, to continue advocating for water and sanitation investment overseas, because of the link, because of how it affects us when people are sick. And the pandemic is another example of that. Unless we shut down every single flight, if people are flying back and forth, then we need to kind of have basic systems in place to at least, make hand washing universally available and soap and that kind of thing. So that's a very sort of perhaps simplistic way of putting it. But they're trying to, WaterAid is basically trying to not just do the hardware. They're saying we want to, it's a bit like a tech model, actually. It's like build, train, and scale. So like show an example and then sort of train people in program on how to basically do something similar, and then like disseminate that information throughout their region and then to the next region.
Yeah, great. Now, and with COVID, how did that, like, what did you guys have to adapt your charity, or did it really put a span into a lot of your programs that you had to change? And or is that
it really, it kind of, it's it basically, we were already kind of in that position of kind of pushing for hygiene education, and luckily we had a really strong track record in pretty much all of our country programs, because it has been, integral, especially in the early days of COVID, when it was all about hand washing, when no one was quite sure whether it was airborne or not, right? And a lot of the places where we're working, you can't really do social distancing. Like, that's not particularly realistic in terms of the limited, physical footprint of a place. So we were actually contacted by a lot of sort of, governments from a lot of countries asking for our help to scale up operations. And as someone who was sort of sitting in my desk getting all this information coming in, it was amazing, just the sheer variety of ideas that came out. It was truly creative. So one really fun example that I always really liked was in New Delhi. They had these mobile tuk-tuk hand washing stations, and they were designed on tuk-tuks so they could move with the population, because just the numbers of people in New Delhi moving around from a train station to a marketplace to to the river, to wherever they're going. We had them placed and they could be moved around so people could move as they were going through their day, and then they could be as maximum use. They could be used multiple times by different people. So that was like the WaterAid tuk-tuks were cool. And then in other places, there were quite a lot of radio campaigns and loudhailer campaigns. And that was really great because it really helped kind of convey the urgency to people who aren't literate, which is, quite large swathes of the population in many of the countries where we're working often aren't literate, and so therefore would really be left behind. And so loudspeakers, obviously in local dialects, that kind of thing. In Madagascar, two of our field officers kind of went on a road trip, basically going from like village to village, and just kind of old school, just going not hand to hand. Everyone was being very distant, but just basically trying to tell people that it was really important that they kept their distance. And those are just a few examples. But it was a hugely diverse and incredible array of options just to all solve the same problem. It was cool.
You're just sort of attacking the crisis at different angles.
Yeah.
So if with WaterAid, if they were to, because there's all different types of donations you can do. Now, Necrotic also asks, he's interested to know if you get you receive a big donation, like over $1 million, like, is that treated differently? Or like, how is that donation handled? Like, especially with the big corporations donating to you.
Yeah, well, so if it's a big donation, like that kind of thing, that often tend to be multi-year projects. And at that point, people don't just like, oh, here's $1 million, like have some fun, do what you like. It's very much like, here's $1 million, and I'm very interested in developing. Let me think. What an example? So it could be something very niche. I really want, rural parts of Colombia. I want the Wayu people of Colombia to have this. So when it's like a very big amount, and it's not that they can just influence our policy. Obviously, like we have strict protocols about like, well, we're not going to ship in bottled water like this. We're not going to do that. We're all about like, no, we need to build a system that will last when we are gone. So there's already been quite a lot of weeding out of the slightly more outrageous ideas that sometimes come in. But then then we kind of track the progress and, hey, look, here's what's happened. Here's what it was like before intervention. And we measure it by, the measurement can be hard because you can't always, no, not hard. Measurement's complicated. And so it's measured by things like how many water systems are actually working, has absenteeism been reduced at school, has the number, this is really dark, sorry guys, the number of children dying under 5, has that number reduced? Because unfortunately that's still, dirty water and chronic diarrhea is still a very big killer of young children in many countries. So we kind of use those metrics to then sort of, to report back and say, look, these things have increased. Productivity has increased. Health has increased. Employment in the area has increased. Health, those sort of things. Number of water, working water taps. It's interesting with schools in particular. We discovered that when there's working toilets in the school, teachers are much more likely to stay in their jobs. And it's like obvious when you say it, being like, oh yeah, I guess it kind of would be if you were. It's kind of a recruitment tool now. So that's, an unexpected development. It's good to know that.
Oh, indeed. So with that, so when you WaterAid has been involved with a program and they're really choosing to educate this community, do you know the rate of the success and like measuring the success with the lower rates of the issues that are happening? Do you have a successful turnover of your
so we would consider a project successful if the community was using their systems, and then if they were being maintained. So if the community suddenly stops communicating with you, that's like a red flag. Truly, off the top of my head, I wouldn't know the actual like general figure because I'm not in the programmatic space myself. I get much more simplified versions of what's happening because I'm in the sort of like client-facing, donor-facing world. So it's hard to measure. But
I was sorry. I was just going to, you give a good example of like if they stop communicating with you. And that is a hurdle that WaterAid would face, and over the years from 1989, I would assume it's happened less and less because you've now got strategies.
No, it definitely can happen. And we all have this image of like the white savior complex, which is pretty much the development trope, the idea of people kind of turning up and saying this is how it must be done, and basically WaterAid just trying not to do that. We're sort of trying to build on a good history and say and sort of encourage in country kind of resilience and sort of appetite to kind of own these programs. We try and make a lot of effort to involve the community very early on in the planning and everything, just so they really feel like it's theirs. It's their product, it's for them. They're not sort of, it's not tokenistic.
Yeah.
One nice example recently we did was in Ethiopia, and it was called 20 Villages. And it was essentially just the idea of like one system was built, and then you can invite, elected officials and village dignitaries and people to come and see it for themselves and just say, hey, come and see it in this village, which is very like your village. And I'm using village and it sounds pejorative. I mean, like, just come to this community and see what's been done and let us know if you're interested. And yeah, they are, of course. They're like, wow, this is incredible. And no one's spending, 5 miles every day trying to collect dirty water that's going to make them sick. This is incredible. So it's things like that. It's trying to work in a very appropriate way and get people enthusiastic themselves without feeling that they're being sold to or there's some weird creepy catch,
Yeah. What else do I have to ask? So you have the large scale of big corporations donating, and then on the small scale, could you give us like examples of how people can get involved, just from?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, absolutely. So we have, a lot of our work is funded by thousands of small donations from people. But in terms of like volunteering and sort of, there's lots of like fundraising that happens. Lots of people who do gaming stuff on Tiltify, on Twitch. There's a lot of people on there that like to fundraise and sort of have their causes, and that's always really fun. We have sponsored runs. A lot of those are run from the UK though, because they just have a bigger office. We have lots of things like Walk for Water, or one that's called Just Water, which is really harsh, where after the winter holidays, they encourage people to give up everything except water for a month, which I personally cannot quite wrap my head around. I'm like, oh goodness, for a whole month, like no coffee or anything. So it's like really hard. There's things like that. We have there's lots of different ways. I feel like I'm just rambling. I'm just saying words now.
That's fine.
But it's fun. The Tiltify community is really fun. Lots of gaming. We can have quite a lot of fun there, which is quite nice.
Beautiful. And how do you measure, like, what is the process of the ethics involved, especially when accepting donations, and how you approach, like, making sure you're doing the right thing? Like, is there a...
Oh, in terms of like making sure we're not like being influenced by donations.
Yeah.
We have very strict like measures, and basically like you can't like launder money through WaterAid. So in terms of like, there would never be a scenario where someone gives us a big amount of money and then stipulates that, but you must build in this place. We have our current system for working on projects it's based on where our current footprint is. There's no point suddenly like jetting out into a completely new region where we have absolutely no track record, no relationships, no trust. That's a silly way to do business. So that's one thing. We also factor in the kind of the temperature of the government. Not every government welcomes intervention from international non-profits. I can name a few. I'm sure we all can, but there's a few that are surprising. You're like, no, there's a need here, but it's something that it's not well received right now. So you have to then just like step back and not burn bridges and see what happens next time there's an election cycle. It's not my job to figure out how to handle that.
That's why it's so complex.
Yes.
And now you're part of the Giving Block, and you're receiving crypto as donations. And is there any challenges you face with that, or policies that are involved with that may be different from the regular?
Well, so actually, it's interesting. So the Giving Block have just been great. They're so supportive, and I was begging our team for a while to join up with the Giving Block. And
I was going to say, did they contact you, or did WaterAid contact them?
I think I contacted them, and I was like pretty persistent. But I was also at that point working. We were a smaller team then, and we were coming out of some sort of rather strict budgeting. And it was hard sell. I was like, guys, I want to do this thing. And they were like, what, cryptocurrency? Isn't that just like really creepy and illegal? And is that the Silk Road? And I was like, no, it is not the Silk Road. Everyone just calm down. So it just, I did what I call my water over stone technique, which is when I just like drip, 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 and I just keep going until eventually I get a yes. And so I was working with the Giving Block. And they're just really fun. And so again, they're much like anything else. It has yet to happen that we get a donation that's so big that it scares us. But any day now, I'm excited. It might happen. I'm like, Elon Musk might just drop some money in. Who knows? But again, it's the same principle. Like we would treat it as we would do like a large cash gift, and there's no way anyone could then give that gift and then sort of demand things that we're not already doing. And we've also kind of set up our policy as if we got money in a crypto sense that we were not happy with or we really felt was shady, and any effort to contact that donor didn't work, we would just send it back. We're like, some things are just not worth the kind of the headache. So we have standards, but yes, I would love to have that program, I won't lie.
Yeah. Yeah, because on your website you have the crypto donation, and then it's people can hide their identity. So if they do a big donation, would that, like, how would you suspect if it is suspicious or just someone being very generous?
Yeah, well, so if it was, but that's partly why. Yeah, partly why I'm using the Giving Block, because I would sort of ask for some of their help. Do they know, has this donor donated anywhere else before? Like, is there anything we can do? Because if they don't want me to know who they are, that's fine. I'm all about like respecting what the donor wants. I'm like, if you want to be anonymous, so be it. I understand you don't want to get like then constant solicitations and emails, like, understood. And then, but a lot of them, obviously, if they're giving big amounts and they're US citizens, there's a tax advantage to declaring their email address, right? Because they get the receipts. So if so that's why with the Giving Block, they could be anonymous to me, but they could get a receipt via the Giving Block. So if it was someone giving a massive donation and they did not declare themselves in that sense, I would definitely enlist their help and just sort of, I'd do everything I could to sort of like
tick the boxes.
Tick the box and legitimize it, just make sure that it because then you get an email the next day and it's like, we want you to work in Russia. I'd be like, well, we can't do that. So I'm making a joke. To be very clear, I'm like,
you're right. And just so I'm looking at like getting involved in like the donations on the website. So as a donator, you can choose, like I was saying, like you can get involved with purchasing pumps and everything, like and water, I think rain tanks.
Rainwater harvesting, you can sort of fund things like this. You can pay for the equivalent of that kind of thing,
And as the donator, do you get a follow-up and like, okay, your pump has gone, or the harvesting has helped this community, or like a more involved and direct, okay, this is what I'm actually helping?
So a lot of it is like, the lower values, it's more like this can pay for something like this kind of thing. But we definitely follow up with communities, and so we often do it in batches of time, like people that donated during this period of time under this threshold, that money went to this project in Malawi. This is what happened, and this is what this is what happened before, this is what's happening now. Like, it is quite sort of straightforward, and we really just focus on the people that the end recipients whose lives have been changed. We sort of try and keep it very focused on the people, because that's just more motivating.
Well,
Who's interested in the Mark II pump.
What is the turnover? So if I donate today, when will my money be used?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. It can actually take quite a while, and I'm going to be honest, I don't know why it quite takes as long as it does, other than people don't just want to be like shooting off bits of money, every day. That's just sort of too kind of hard to track, and it's expensive, bank fees incur. And we're not quite on the blockchain yet. I am trying to work on WaterAid using the blockchain for financial transactions, but we're not there yet. And so it can take a while, up to 6 months, for money to get placed directly. But it is possible to report on things, but usually based on blocks of time.
Yeah, understandable. And I got a just sort of one. So, are there any charities that the WaterAid like works together with, or are there similar charities that you guys kind of cross together, or you know what yeah, is there any other involvement of other charities that you guys work with?
And then we work with lots of different charities and lots of different sort of people, usually for different like parts of a project.
Okay.
But also there's lots. So we often work with CARE on projects, and they do big stuff. And some recent examples that are quite nice is that once we've been in and sort of set up a water system for a community, another nonprofit like Action Against Hunger can come in. And this happened in Colombia, I think it was. I think it was Colombia, possibly Nicaragua. But anyway, I think it was Colombia. And they would then come in and they could issue kind of like livestock and seeds and farming, basically, and sort of a starter farm kit to people. And because there was water, it was then kind of appropriate to do so. And the animals could be looked after. The goats, you could take some cute goats, and they could be looked after. And so that's kind of a lovely example of like the sort of the trickle down effect of once water's in place, so many other things open up. So that was cool. We also work often just on the ground in sort of the countries where we're working with local partners. Just, we're stronger together, and so, yeah, we do work with a lot of other nonprofits.
Yeah, beautiful.
Cool. Yeah.
And
nice
so
to do.
I just muted myself 1 second. Do you have a video of like just when a program started to its end result, like that you could link?
Probably. Yeah,
like
no, I've got
you've
one.
seen some stuff, but like a little bit more instead of like that we can see visually. That I think that would be important to see.
Yeah. I'll have to sort of dig one up for you.
Yeah, you don't have to do it now. But just I reckon that would be really awesome to see, and just what the work goes and how money is what it goes towards.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I will make a note of that. But yeah, no, we call them a big day at the moment, like when the taps turn on for the first time. Yeah, they're pretty cool. They're nice. Yeah.
Well, kind of. If I've forgotten anything in chat, please, I'm just write a question down. But I'm kind of. I've said what I like. I've asked what I wanted to say. Is there any questions you would like to say, Sarah, about our sort of team?
Yeah, no, I really like it. I'm sort of it was Mike from the Giving Block put me in touch with you guys. So shout out to him. Yeah, so I just want to say, how many times have you done the kind of competition side of it in terms of? Because I know there's 13 teams, and you're all on an
there's 13 tribes.
And
no, sorry. I didn't. I think I said that a bit with attitude, didn't I?
I was like,
I was trying to think of what the answer, and I just talked. So which this is our first charity initiative, and we've gone through I think 10 charities, and we've got 3 left to do, and then we'll have our governance will vote to see. We'll vote for the I don't want to say winner, but who we think to receive our donation. Yeah. So this is
in terms of that, the game itself, like what in the NFT part of it, I just was like, how do you all interact with each other? Like, do you all know each other in real life? Are you just internet friends? Like,
no, it's just people that have purchased this NFT, the Space Poggers, like the little picture that I have, and other people you might see down there, are all joined together in this community. And then we have our little talks, like people from because I'm just being sort of substitute as a team leader or tribe leader. So people and part of the team will give you a better answer. But yeah, we're just involved. And then like for me, I just started, and then I just eventually ended up talking to people and getting involved in the community. And just from there, it brings me to like these charities that I'm just like, haven't really not thought of, but like been exposed to. Then I think it's a great thing that the team has organized to do this charity, and hopefully in the future we'll do more.
It's very cool. I like that generally about the sort of NFT kind of blockchain world. It's really it's interesting. I like the fact that people are sort of taking, they're solving problems that have not yet been solved in their own way, and I think that's so empowering. yeah, and I guess, yeah, like, oh, do you guys know about all this? Because I've got so many questions, so many questions. I won't ask them all now. I promise. I'm like, no, I'll be restrained.
Right.
I'll be restrained.
I'll probably have a hard time answering them.
Don't worry. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pop a little few photos in that I just downloaded
beautiful.
just to showcase some of just what we're doing and what. Yeah, I'll just pop them in the chat.
Yeah.
Hang on. Bear with me a second. Now I'm like got carried away downloading hundreds, and then I'm like, that's a lot of images. I could just limit. I don't have to send all of them. Just a few is fine.
And there's also information of each program you guys like not running, but
I mean, there is a lot of it's not usually. I could probably get like summary information.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's probably over about 500 different projects happening right now around the world.
Oh, wow.
So there's just a lot. So it's kind of getting that information and getting it updated is always somewhat of a challenge.
Yeah.
You tend to find out once it's done. You're like, oh, it's done, cool. But yes, I can definitely give you some examples. Is there any kind of types of projects that people like to know about or countries of interest? I can definitely pick some things out and say like, hey, this is what's happening here. Yeah. And
a donation will like, how is it decided which program? I think you answered it before, but I just want to double check. Or like we get to choose or no?
So it depends. If it's a large donation, and by large, like usually over like $15,000-$20,000, like that kind of large, then it then goes into like, okay, so what do you want to have happen? Anything under that amount. Sorry?
Yeah. A more like hands-on approach. Oh, you've donated this, let's talk. Kind of like what?
Yes, exactly. Because anything under that, it's like it's actually just too hard to accommodate everybody's interest, and everybody's like, well, I want nothing would get done. So we have a kind of anything over. It's usually like 20,000 US. Then we're like, okay, what are you interested in? Where do you want to go? And hopefully it's somewhere that we're already working. Because again, it's one of those like if we're not working in that country or in that area in particular. Or if someone comes and is like, hey, I want to do something very tangible, but I don't know what, we can then point to, well, like this $20,000 donation. Here, we'll get you, we'll kind of top up this, finish this, we'll just, own this project. And, it often varies, obviously, because things vary cost-wise across countries.
Yeah.
But, roughly $10,000 pretty much outfits a school, like that kind of thing. So you can kind of say, oh, if you're interested in education, let's try and build on that, or health centers. Let's equip a health center.
No, that's good to know. Just like get involving in the actual complex process of the whole initiatives. I'm kind of just gonna I'll be just keep rambling, so we might just finish up shortly. But just to everyone who's listening, I'm pretty sure there will be a badge, and I have designed a little clothing for us, if I'm allowed to. I'll put it in the chat now for people that have attended.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and then we'll get those we'll get that uploaded so it'll be available as a custom for people as well.
Yeah.
Oh, cute. Sorry, I see that. And they're carrying a backpack, which is what we want because girls should go to school. So I'm feeling it. I'm having all the feels here, guys. This is lovely. Wow.
Yeah. It's just
sorry, I'm going to stop searching for JPEGs. I'm just going to give it some heart emotion reactions. This is very cool. This is very cool. I like the graphics. And then a penguin, I was very pleased that I was in the penguin team because I'm like, well, penguins need water. Like llamas, less so. Like they still need it, but they're less associated with water. So, wow, fine. I like it. Mafalda, excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
This didn't happen.
That's a little bit of fun.
Thread. I don't know how to do that. I'm not going to do that. Okay. Look amongst yourselves, guys. I'm just going to find some pretty pictures.
Yeah.
I think you're in Australia, is that correct?
Yeah, I am. So thank you. And people watching it, sorry, I don't know if it's late for you guys. But
it's okay for me, but I'm pretty civilized, but UK would be struggling right now. A good one. It's just a nice little classic picture. Not quite as cool as the So this is a picture from a program in India, part of hand washing education stuff. Let's have a look.
You're putting it in the flight deck chat?
Yes.
Yeah,
I
sweet.
did. Yes, yeah. Then some
I was just
that moment of
double
doubt.
checking.
You're like, where did I put it? Hang on 1 second. I'm gonna find some more. Tell you, my desktop is a black hole. Oof. Tidy it up. Wait, no one needs to hang around waiting for me to post pictures. I can do this when you're. I can do this on my time, not yours.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll just wrap up there then. If there's no other questions.
There's none from me. This is my first AMA, so thank you so much for having me.
Likewise. And thank you. Thanks everyone, and thanks for organizing it all.
Awesome.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Thank you for attending. I'll close this out, and then we'll have the we'll have the recording out to Jim in a little bit, and then we'll get this up on YouTube, so if, so anyone can listen back on it as well.
Yeah, and I'll probably do a summary as well, just for like because it's a lot of time to listen to, especially like 13 charities to go through. So I'll do a little summary.
That's great.
And if I have any other questions, I'll probably message you as well, Sarah.
That would be great, because I'm aware that I possibly wasn't the most eloquent. I'm going to say that now. So if there's anything I didn't explain well, or I should have been more direct about, please let me know, and I will configure.
Yeah, beautiful.
Awesome.
Perfect.
All right, I'm gonna.
Thank you. We'll finish it there.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. I'm gonna close out the stage now.
Thanks.
Thank you. See you guys.